Legacy media is falling apart, and as it crumbles, a void is opening, a void that we intend to fill. The big legacy news networks currently average just 1.2 million viewers a weeknight, and those numbers are only going to get lower. Legacy media is dying, and the younger generation has moved on. Legacy media panders. Legacy media lies. Legacy media does not know what the truth is, and they don't care about it. Legacy media is a dumpster fire. This is why we few in our wild imaginations have started the Fight Laugh Feast Network. Our goal is to take down the legacy media giant of the last 50 years with our 5 stones. We started in 2016 with our flagship show, Cross Politics. Since those small beginnings, we now air on DirecTV. Our broader podcast network now gets over 4 million downloads a year. And our Fight Laugh Feast pub, which includes TV shows like This America, The Rowdy Christian's Guide, Pastors in Politics, and As the Lord Pleases, with your support, many more to come. Our goal is to become the flagship new media 2.0 network over the next 50 years and take over nightly news, sports, sitcoms, hunting shows, and more, all conveniently stored for you in our Fight Laugh Feast pub. We're already reaching the next generation through our podcast shows on YouTube, X, and our pub, while also tapping into legacy media audiences by airing our shows on TV through DirecTV and Xfinity. We have made a lot of progress with some duct tape and a good bit of intuition and a lot of sweat. And now we need your support more than ever. The TV networks have had such a negative impact on our households, and we're trying, by the grace of God, to put a stop to that. We have the opportunity. We just need the army. Now more than ever, we need you to join our pub to help us reach our goal of 1 million pub supporters in the next 5 years. There's no way around it. Competing with Fox and the Alphabet networks without money is virtually impossible. It's cheap for you to join. And when you do, you're combining your small monthly support with a growing army of like-minded Christians. We have thousands, we need millions. So if you want more of the Alphabet network's misinformation and lies, don't join. But if you want to give us a mere 5 stones, then please join the pub, and together we will take a swing at the head of big media, all the while fighting, laughing, and feasting to the glory of God.
Hey y'all, welcome to Cross Politics on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. Pastor Toby Chuck Knox, I'm the water boy. It's good to be with you today, and we got to bring this Idaho story to you.
You're not going to acknowledge our guest?
I guarantee. Everyone knows Davis Younts is our lawyer.
Well,
and he comes on
hey, Gabe.
all the time.
Look to your left. We have a full studio here.
Yeah. And we do. We have a studio audience. It's Grace Agenda Week, so we have a full studio audience.
You guys could have clapped for the opening. It would have made us all feel better.
Can we still get a clap? There we go.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Now that's it.
I think we should start having Bill clap for us every single time, because he's here for almost every single show.
It's just Bill clapping. I think, Bill, you should totally do that.
It's like there we go. We have an audience of one.
That's okay. I perform for an audience of one.
Business owners, is your company struggling to grow? What if I told you that the right employee could grow your business by 5, 10, or even 25%? You would be crazy.
I need that.
Not to take that deal, right? That's exactly what redballoon.work does. Red Balloon Recruiter, in fact, this is what they're offering. Their personalized source and screen process connects you with top talent, increasing revenue and reducing costs. So visit redballoon.work today, redballoon.work, and transform your hiring. Also, Story Real Estate. Ever felt like you just another client? You know, just like a person, like a name on a list.
I want to be special. I want them I go see a house, they bring me a flask.
We know, Gabe.
And a cigar, and I can walk through this stranger's house.
Thank you. Well, Gabe, you need to get connected with Story Real Estate. These guys sit down, hand you a cigar and a glass of... No, it doesn't say that. Sorry. They hear your story and then tailor make an experience just for you. It's like your favorite barista. Well, it's kind of like a bartender, I guess.
They bring you coffee.
Knowing exactly how you like your coffee. Or your scotch, maybe. So if you want a completely personalized experience, advice, My advice is use Story Real Estate, but don't just take my word. Look at their 1,000+ Google reviews. Head over to storyrealestate.com, storyrealestate.com, and start your personalized real estate journey today.
Man, over 1,000 Google reviews. That's pretty good.
We're really grateful to have with us the unofficial cross-politic attorney.
He's in more trouble.
I think he's lost money. The more he comes on the show, the more money he
Davis
probably
Younts.
loses. I don't know, Davis. Davis, do you make money off us?
No.
I only get his time, and I drain him of his time.
Man, we need to send him and his wife like a gift card or something at least. I mean, come on, like we just send him out for dinner or something. So
should I introduce this?
Go
Because
for it.
this
Go for
story's like near and dear to what's going on.
Go, Gabe.
Yeah. I mean, you wrote the press release. I mean, come on.
I did, and I get fact checked by like 3 different lawyers or something. So,
Good.
So in Idaho, Idaho's a conservative state. Supposedly, we got a conservative governor.
That's what they say.
And Idaho National Guard hired this conservative, traditional value commander.
Okay.
And he's commander over, I think, the recruiting services nationwide, statewide for the National Guard.
Idaho National Guard.
Yes.
Okay.
And Davis, he's commander of recruitment, wasn't he?
That's right.
Yeah. So they hire him, and then 5 days later they fired him.
Okay.
6 days later they fired him because of like this LGBT movement internally in the Idaho National Guard, who did not like some things that this commander said publicly like a year or so ago on a campaign he's running for office.
Okay.
And so they fired him 6 days later. Now Davis is his lawyer. This major's lawyer, and then he has a national lawyer because this is not just a state issue; it's also a national issue because it's a First Amendment issue. Can I speak as a citizen?
Yeah.
And say what I want to say, and not be fired because I said privately what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the issue. We're gonna dive deep into it with Davis Younts on it, but for me, what is happening here in Idaho is kind of atrocious. I want to hit that because Brad Little. And when Davis will talk about this too, but Brad Little's the commander-in-chief of the Idaho National Guard.
Oh, right. Like the president is the commander-in-chief of the military,
That's right.
United States military. The governor is the commander-in-chief of the National Guard.
That's right. And this is one of those things in your states, man, you got to know the layers here that are going on.
Yeah, I'm just thinking as you're talking, sorry to interrupt. But
No,
I'm just thinking as you're talking, maybe you've seen the videos, but there are people in the UK being arrested apparently for social media posts.
Yes.
Right?
So I'm trying to get Joe Boot to come on our show so we can talk about that.
But this is like, these are just a few steps removed from that, where it's like you're getting fired from a position because of your conservative views, because of your traditional views that are not acceptable. Is there a question in the room?
What they post?
They post about the immigration.
I just want to know before I jump on. Like,
have you followed the UK stuff?
I'm just wanting to know. I mean,
just get outraged.
Okay. Well, sorry.
All right. So Davis,
repeat what I said, but actually make it true.
Right. So what we have is we have a major in the Idaho National Guard. He ran for public office. During his campaign for public office, he said things that are consistent with a biblical view of marriage and human sexuality. After his political campaign, he applied for and was hired to have a full-time position. So folks in the Guard, in the National Guard, we think of them traditionally as the weekend warriors. 1 weekend a month, they go in, they do their 2 weeks in the summer, and then they respond to, floods, emergencies within the state, and then sometimes they get called up and deploy in support of the active duty military. So what you have is a major. He applied for a full-time job with the Guard. He was the most qualified candidate. He went through the vetting, the interviewing process, and he was hired for this job. Starts the job just 5 or 6 days into the job, and there is a complaint filed. And based on that complaint alone, he's brought into an office and he's told, either you resign today or we will fire you. And he said, can't I talk to a lawyer first? And they said, no, resign now or we're going to fire you. Wow. He said no, left the room, got a lawyer involved, and that's where this case started. But the reality is, as crazy as it sounds, he was removed from his position because of his biblical traditional beliefs on marriage and human sexuality and things he said in a political campaign. Not radical things, not anything different than what we would hear in our churches on Sunday morning, or that we might express as our belief that marriage should be between a man and a woman, and we should not have the government endorse homosexual or same-sex marriage, right? I've just said it. I'm going to be fired now. But I work for myself, at least for now. So we're good there. But no, I mean, those are the kinds of things he said. So that's what happened. This was not because of his actions. Essentially, someone that worked for him, an LGBTQ activist within the Guard, filed this complaint because they said, other than one meeting where he interacted with me, he hadn't spoken to me yet, even though we don't work in the same place, and he'd only been in the job for 5 to 6 days. So all of that was bad enough. We tried to negotiate a way out of this. We tried to make it right. And then they did another investigation. They did a formal investigation. And the findings of the investigation, the official investigation conducted by the Idaho National Guard, the findings were that my client had engaged in discrimination because of things he said in a civilian, private citizen capacity while running for office. But worse, they said that the Idaho National Guard needs to develop a better vetting process so that, and I'm summarizing here, or I'm paraphrasing here, so that people like this don't get hired into these positions again.
Whoa.
Now, so that's what the investigation found. That's what's in process. I will say that the governor's office, the National Guard works for the governor's office. The governor's office should have been made aware of this today, and they can act to fix this. So part of the reason I'm talking about it now is it is my hope that the governor's office gets involved. The adjutant general, the TAG is what we call it. TAG is the acronym. The adjutant general for each state's National Guard works essentially at the pleasure of the governor. So it is my hope that TAG becomes aware of this, actually does their job, drills down into what's happening, and that the governor gets involved as well and puts a stop to this, because this is as bad as it sounds. This is a written investigation. We have it in writing where the recommendation is not only should this person be removed because of their traditional biblical values, but we should have a vetting process that eliminates anyone like them from holding a position of leadership in the Idaho National Guard.
Davis, is this the usual way that people are fired?
It's a great question. And the answer is no. I mean, they really did attempt to fire him before the investigation. Really, they attempt to coerce him into resigning.
Right.
But the military, the Army has what they call a 15-6 investigation. The Army loves acronyms and other things. 15-6 just refers to an Army regulation 15-6. So typically what happens is you do the investigation first, then the findings of the investigation are presented to the person who's being accused. They have the opportunity to respond to them, and then the leadership will step in and make a decision based on the investigation as well as the response. So that's the normal process. Here, what's troubling is they tried to force him into resigning before we even got through an investigation.
Okay.
This is, Idaho's a conservative state.
Yeah, you keep saying that.
It's supposed to be. It's supposed to be. But what is so concerning about this is they're basically this LGBT complains, this LGBT guy, woman, I don't even know, complains and gets this guy fired with no investigation.
Yeah.
And then now what could happen, and this is why it's so important that Davis and these guys are fighting it, what could happen is they could actually change the rules on how they vet potential hiring candidates in Idaho.
Right.
Which would exclude all those who believe in biblical marriage.
Right.
Okay, so Davis, there's a few things. Let me give this a caveat first. There's a few people I would never want to debate. Dave Bonson, that just seems like a bad idea.
James White.
James White. Yeah, that's without saying. Yeah. You definitely on that list. I would want to see Jeff Schaefer. Never want to see those guys in the courtroom on the other side of me, on the opposite. But I'm gonna pick the devil's advocate here, and I want to be able to fire somebody who says something I don't like as an owner of a company, right? So if somebody came up and said, we hate the Bulls, fired. Yeah, I don't like them.
Or they love the Yankees?
Or they love the Yankees.
Fired.
Fired right there.
Yeah.
And I don't want to see you on the opposite side of me in court arguing that he should have the right to hate the Bulls and love the Yankees. I just don't. So doesn't a person who is the head of the company or company have the right to fire people for what it is they don't like with that person?
Yes, I agree with you 100%. Absolutely, we should have that freedom.
You won.
But the difference, but here's my lawyer caveat. Now we're talking about a state. We're talking about a state government, and we're talking about the state government. Different in your scenario is an employer or a state government or the federal government caving to a complaint that has no logical, rational, reasonable basis, right? So there are differences there. If we were talking about a private corporation, private business, then, I become very libertarian when it comes to that. And I want to see companies have the ability to say, no, I don't like what you said. I don't like how you did that. I should have the freedom to fire you. This is my company. This is my business. We should have a lot more freedom in that area. But this is the state of Idaho doing this. And again, even worse, implementing a policy of discrimination. And that's where I think the elected leaders of Idaho should be held accountable to the people of Idaho, and they should have to answer for this and hopefully get engaged very quickly and fix it.
Okay, I don't want to shotgun blast you here, or machine gun, but it's a couple different things. So what is it that you would want Governor Little to do that would ultimately fix not just this problem that we have in front of us, but also we have a cultural problem where if this is what's going to happen inside of the state National Guard, well, then he can't just come in here and say, okay, you guys are wrong, put them back into place, because there's a whole culture underneath this that's developing that's like, okay, you might get it this time, Governor Little, but you just wait, because there's a bureaucracy that's operating that has a mindset that's going to do this anyway. So what does he need to do to really fix the problem if he jumps in?
Well, it's a great question because there are two pieces. So he does need to jump in. He does need to get involved. They need to take this investigation and shred it, right? They need to throw it in the shredder. They need to restore my client back to his position, and they need to restore his good name. But that's only part of it. So this is where we get into some really interesting things about the doctrine of the lesser magistrate and other things, because we need governors and we need leaders in the National Guard to be willing to stand up to the federal government as appropriate and push back. We saw some of that during COVID, but there was very, very little because of the way the money is tied into it. But we need governors that are willing to take a stand and push back. And that's part of it, because what's worse than all of this is on June 14th of this year, the Army, so DOD for all of the Army, issued an anti-extremism policy. That policy is in part what is cited in this investigation as labeling my client an extremist because he has traditional views of marriage and human sexuality. So the entire Army has adopted a policy that is problematic. And I could argue, and we can go to the details of why, but I think any member of the Army that ties to a church that preaches like the churches we go to could be labeled an extremist just because they're supporting that ministry. And we can break that down. But to get back to your specific question, Governor Little needs to be prepared to take a stand against those policies and say, not in Idaho. We're not going to label Christians extremists simply because they have biblical values.
Who was it that ran the investigation? Was that was their internal committee somehow inside of the National Guard?
So what they do is they appoint an individual officer and they give him a legal advisor, a JAG, a lawyer to advise him, and that's who does it. So that's the stage of this process. So again, it's not too late to fix this because at this point, it's just an investigation. It's just a recommendation and a finding. So the leadership of the Idaho National Guard can make this right. But now's the time for them to do that.
What's his name? I got friends.
I'm not gonna out him here. Not yet.
I mean, I got those kind of friends up in the woods.
Well, but
in Idaho.
Well, no, but I think that's really getting at it though. This is the kind of thing. That's whatever is behind this investigation. Either they're showing their hand.
Yeah, that's right.
They're showing where their morality is, and they're saying who's invited to the table and who's not. And it's like, okay, how deep does this go? Because Governor Little is going to need to know how much he needs to do in order to be able to clean this up.
That's right.
Okay. I've got a couple questions.
Yes.
I need to follow up on. First of all, so it sounds like you're saying, Davis, that there's some federal or national pressure being applied to states like Idaho to get in line with certain progressive values. Is that what you're saying?
100%. 100%. The Army's policy on extremism labels any organization that advocates against gay marriage, that would espouse and would advocate for a traditional biblical view of human sexuality, that any group that does that is an extremist group. That's what the DoD, Army, just the Army so far, the Army's policy memo says. And then it says extremist activities for military members include providing support to any organization that engages in that type of advocacy. So again, I don't think I'm being, I'm exaggerating when I say, I go to a church that advocates against gay marriage and that has held prayer ceremonies and other things outside of drag queen story hours, all of that. So arguably, by some standards, somehow interfering with their rights. We weren't. That's not what we were doing. We're just praying. But again, people would argue we were intimidating or otherwise, preventing that activity. And so if I were active duty Army, or if I were still serving, by tithing to my church, I'm providing financial support to an organization that's advocating things that have now been labeled as extremist by the Army. And so if that's the policy coming out of the Pentagon, that's the policy coming out of the DoD, there's absolutely tremendous pressure on the states to cave and to adopt similar policies. And again, this policy memo was cited in this investigation as part of the justification for attempting to label my client as an extremist.
Wasn't there a set of slides or something that presented some of this that went public for a little while, and then one of the branches of the military said, "Oh, that was an accident. We didn't mean to use those slides in a training program," or something like that? Is that ringing a bell?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So that was anti-extremism training that was being done at a lot of different places. It was a slide deck that was different places. You're talking specifically out of Fort Liberty in North Carolina, formerly known as Fort Bragg, right, where that slide deck included, and it was a template that was created for anybody in the military to use for anti-extremism training, but it included multiple pro-life groups as extremist groups.
Okay, that's
labeling pro-life organizations as extremist groups.
And they kind of walked back some of those slides, if I recall correctly. But you're saying the actual guidelines from the DoD are there.
If you read the Army policy, it is clear that I hate to give anybody ideas, but a smart lawyer could easily make an argument to say tithing to a church, if that church is labeled as an extremist group, makes you're supporting extremist activity then.
Yeah. It is a little exciting to be part of an extremist group, don't you think?
Man,
I'm not a part of one. I'm not a part of one.
What is the status? As I was thinking about all this, I realized, I don't think we can run for office, you guys. I just realized that.
I gave up on that a long time ago.
And I certainly can't get hired, apparently, with the National Guard. But Davis, what's the status of this case now? So you mentioned that this is going before, I think you said TAG for the governor. What's the status?
So we received a copy of the investigation last week. We provided a written response to it. Our client has the opportunity to respond to it in writing. So we provided a very detailed written response. And then it is now, the ball is in the court of the Idaho National Guard. Okay. They can find that this investigation was legally insufficient, invalid. They can throw it out, or they can proceed to try and fire our client. If they do that, then we'll see him in federal court.
So he has not technically been fired yet. Is that what you're saying?
He was removed from the position and he's been put in a holding position. So he was fired from that job and he's still working in another sort of backroom capacity for the Guard, awaiting the outcome of this.
Got it.
We'll put you back here.
What and you said you'll see you in federal court, and what Idaho
federal court?
What federal court would you guys be in?
We would be seeking to file in Idaho in federal court. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Liberty Counsel is Richard Mass from Liberty Counsel is involved in this case. We already have local Idaho counsel that's affiliated with Liberty Counsel. So we are preparing for those steps if that's what it takes.
Now, I think this needs to be explained a little bit, but we haven't mentioned this major's name. Why have you kept his name out of this interview?
I mean, to be frank, I've been advised by multiple people that when this story goes nationwide, there are LGBT extremist groups that will put his safety and his family's safety in jeopardy if we use his name.
Sounds like a reasonable group of people.
Right? Yeah. Like, who are the real extremists?
Wow.
Yeah.
So Knox brought up the question about like the kind of libertarian business question. I want to be able to fire anybody that I
fired. So
Yeah,
just like that. I
it's
didn't
done.
like what you said.
It's done.
I didn't like what you said.
And am I really actually? And
You'd be so happy if he was.
you responded and said, "I agree with you on the private business sector side of things, but the government can't do that."
Right.
Now, aren't we kind of giving in that argument? I understand that argument, but at the same time, I feel like we're trying to treat the government like a secular, neutral organization.
No.
When we do that.
No.
Because we're saying the government can't fire for your private beliefs. But your business can.
No, because the government represents us. The government has to. I mean, if we're talking about, the government is supposed
But
to
if
be.
an LGBT person said, I hate my state, I hate my country, I hate traditional marriage or whatever, and I'm like, you're fired.
Yeah.
You aren't good for Idaho.
Precisely because the state is not neutral.
Davis.
He can fire him.
Yeah, the state is Christian.
Davis is saying he can't.
No,
He's saying the government can't.
No.
Private beliefs.
I want to know what Davis thinks.
So I think that there is absolutely a case to be made that the government is going to impose religion on its people, right? And the question is, what religion is that going to be? Yeah. Right now, the Army has taken a position based on this policy memo. I believe nationally, the Army has taken a position that they're going to be enforcing secular humanism as the religion of the nation and the religion they will be enforcing and imposing the values of. So I think we have to take a step back and we have to say that the Christian faith, biblical values in our nation are the only foundation for a government that has allowed any sort of flourishing to go on. So I would say, yes, we should have biblical values as the basis. And if someone is doing something that is counter to those biblical values, God willing, when revival comes, we will get to a point where people who aren't going to be doing those things will be able to be fired in these positions, and that we will be a nation that loves God enough to do that, because we will call sin, sin, and we'll call real crimes, crime, and we'll do what's right in the eyes of God, not in the eyes of man.
That beard ain't just there for beauty.
It's there for theonomy.
That beard got some wisdom on it. Bless him, Lord.
Be careful, gentlemen. I sent a text to Gabe when the Army policy came out, and I said, "Congratulations, we're all extremists now.
Yeah,
we made it." So congratulations to both of you as well. We're there, I guess.
Wait, no,
Knox, you're an extremist.
I can't be.
You are.
You were going to ask a question because I have to know. When you have the DOD or even our entities that are rejecting some of the basic forms of nature, man, woman, childbirth, the whole nine, how do you expect to argue in a court that is rejecting the very reality of nature and think you're going to get a fair hearing? Because you're saying, listen, a person who believes a large majority of what everyone else in America believes, you shouldn't have to argue that, because it should be just like, this is true, this is false. The end, right? But how do you expect to get a fair hearing when the idea of nature is flipped upside down in all of our major institutions?
It is a challenging thing, and it's one of the things that I have to work through and seek spiritual comfort and support in. But ultimately, that's just like a pastor, Toby, preaching on Sunday morning. I am responsible to speak truth. I'm responsible to argue what I believe the law is and should be, as best I can to the best of my ability. And I have to hope that the Spirit works and moves, and that those that hear it will be convicted and will do the right thing based on that. But I mean, that's one of the hardest parts, because whether it's a jury or a board or something else, I'm taking everything I can and I'm handing it over to these people to do the right thing. And that's supposed to be how our system's going to work. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But God can move in some very, very dark places.
That's amazing. You know, I don't think we think about the work of the Spirit as much as we should in this. Like, we have to tell the truth and let the Spirit do the work. That's it's so important. Yeah. Pastor, you were going to say something.
I just want to bring it back to, I mentioned this in the beginning, but I just want to underline, I think, and I want to hold it together with what was just said. Yeah. We trust God and we let the chips fall where they may. We're faithful, we're obedient, we do what we're called to do, and we trust that our King is reigning sovereign
over Idaho,
and so we resist with deep peace in our heart. We stand for the truth with deep joy in our heart, because we know that our King reigns. And at the same time, I just want to circle back to in the UK, they're arresting people for expressing concerns,
anti-immigration concerns
about violent illegal immigrants.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy has been arrested. His crime occurred on July 30, July 30, 31, 3 Facebook posts, where a gentleman named Dunn, Mr. Dunn, posted 3 images, groups of immigrants apparently, and just said, coming to a town near you. And let's say, like, worst case scenario, let's say he's racist.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He doesn't like the way they look, and he doesn't want them to live in his town.
There's no crime committed there.
Still no crime
committed.
That would be the worst case scenario. He's another one. He captioned it, when it's on your turf, then what? The thing is these positions we're expressing ultimately Christian. I'm talking about Christian marriage now. I'm going back to those positions: truth, biblical justice, and so forth. These are things that actually are for the flourishing of human life, and human society.
Yes.
But when you are saying boys can become girls, girls can become boys, and endorsing homosexual marriage, you're actually already endorsing something violent. Mm-hmm. You're arguing for the tearing apart of something that God made, human flourishing. And it's, again, back to his point. I mean, who are the real extremists here? If we're not, we're kind of concerned about saying certain names on this show because of the backlash that might happen. Yeah. Then like. Yeah. And the same thing going on in the UK. There's people saying
there really are violent immigrants.
I'm kind of concerned about immigration. And okay, fine. And then there are violent immigrants doing violent things. The violence is the problem.
They already are applying the first table of the law right here. Anyway, Davis, what do you want us to do here in Idaho? Because I think this is in our backyard.
How can we help?
What's our duty and responsibility here?
I mean, I think we should be, everyone should be calling the governor's office and making sure the governor is aware of what's happening. In particular, this idea that a recommendation could be adopted and could become policy, that anyone with traditional biblical values will not be hired, will not be promoted within the Idaho National Guard. Because here's the thing, I think that we need to understand, and I'm seeing it again and again, and it's going to make me sound like an extremist, but listen, this is a religious battle. We are dealing with a religious fight. And the reality is there are people on the other side, outside of our churches, that are going to take this all the way. And they want there to be no place for our beliefs in society. Maybe they can be talked about on Sunday morning if no one goes to that church and no one hears about it. Right. But they really are seeking confrontation here. And there are some in society, I think, that are just not aware. They don't realize this confrontation is coming, but this confrontation is coming. And the question is, what are we going to do about it? Where are we going to be? And that would be my encouragement to the governor's office in Idaho. Is he going to allow extremists to take over? And is he going to say that in the state of Idaho, if you want to serve in the National Guard, but you are a Christian who holds traditional biblical values, you're not welcome here? Is that really where they're going to be? Because it's going to be a very interesting Idaho National Guard. And I think ultimately it's going to have a really negative impact on the safety and welfare of the people of Idaho if that's going to be the position they take.
And the good thing for the LGBT mafia is that traditional biblical views on marriage aren't being taught in churches on Sunday morning anyways.
Oh, Gabe. On that note, contact the governor of Idaho.
Yeah. Davis, thank you for joining us. Appreciate you, man.
Always appreciate it, man.
If you're single,
Thank you,
get
guys. Take
married.
care.
If you're married, have some kids. If you have kids, go baptize them. Until tomorrow, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politics.
You have to shred these documents.